how do you administer a training program? Selecting participants, how do you go about selecting? Do you take the recommendation of your line managers, or you have any other mechanism wherein you need to identify who is going to attend the training programs, what are the different needs of a particular team or a department, and select the participants? Now, next step after you identified is negotiating the course content, timetables and costs with external training providers. What is the right material? How are you going to design the content? Who is going to be the external provider? What is the cost involved? And booking external and internal training facilities. Now, there is a crunch for resources when it comes to an organization, either say booking of a room, internal or external facilities you need to book in advance, so as to you can have a minimum amount of space for your training and for the right number of people. So you need to book in advance. Sourcing relevant training materials, what are the different type of visual aids or materials that you're going to provide to the trainees so as to give them an adequate learning experience. So you have to source those relevant training materials. Compiling calendars of training events. Now, once you decided, you have to publish a training calendar for a particular period of time, say 6 months ahead or 1 year down the line for a particular financial year. What is the training calendar? Now, participant information briefings and other supporting material needs to be provided. Marketing training programs within the organization. All said and done, you need to market these own programs, your own in-house programs, what the efforts you're going to do for a particular training and development initiative inside the organization, so that people are interested and they volunteer and they register for the training programs, and the line managers will nominate people for these training programs. Let's take a look at on-the-job training and development. One of the first approaches is sitting with Nelly, which means Nelly is a term used to describe a senior person who has adequate hands-on experience in a particular job. So a new recruit is made to sit with the senior person to understand how the work is being done. The job instructions and the methods are clearly demonstrated as the job is performed when you are sitting with a senior person. Now, the problem with this approach is that if the senior person has a negative approach towards work, attitude is not good, the young recruit will have some of the qualities which is not ideal for an organization. Next, moving on to job instruction training. This is a bit refined approach when compared with sitting with Nelly, because you identify the right person with the right attitude, a senior who's got some amount of experience to guide the new recruit, and they go through the learning process. So it's on the job training, a bit more refined than sitting with Nelly. The elements are identified, what needs to be drilled into a new recruit, what are the downsides of a process sitting with Nelly. So those particular elements which needs to be inculcated in a particular new recruit, it is done through job instruction training. Now, coaching is a sophisticated approach wherein you have coaches identifying and demonstrating how a job needs to be done, breaking down into different elements, what are the particular problem areas for a particular trainee, and identifying those development areas and walking through with them what are the areas wherein it needs to be improved. Moving on. Now, mentoring is another approach wherein it's a long-term approach wherein a mentor is a guide, ideally both more experienced and more powerful in terms of their roles and responsibilities in the organization, whose concern is the trainee's long-term personal development. The other approaches that you saw was more of to give a shape to the day-to-day activities and the short-term performance of an individual, whereas mentoring is long-term prospects of an individual, say career development. So mentor is typically a person who has more knowledge, is established, typically with a couple of decades experience, who has seen the cycles in a particular industry, so he can take a look at an individual and guide him in his long-term career prospects. Action learning is another aspect wherein the individual does activities as part of the job and learns as he moves on. Now, what are the other methods of training? Job rotation or shadowing. One individual is rotated between different departments so that he understands the dynamics, the intricacies and the functions of other departments, wherein in the traditional concept an individual only knows what his department is doing. In job rotation, he is shifted between different jobs in between departments so that his skill levels are improved and he can be put into different roles. Temporary promotion, wherein a particular individual can be given a temporary promotion in the absence of a senior, just to give him a feel of what a typical managerial role has to do on the day-to-day basis without giving him serious responsibilities and slowly grooming for future positions. Now, assistant to positions, these positions are created just to make sure an individual helps a person in a senior level wherein he knows what he is going through in a senior position. He assists in different activities and he gets to understand what are the roles and responsibilities, what are the duties attached to a particular role by assisting him in several dimensions. Project or committee work, now individuals are picked up and put into certain projects or committee work just to make them understand the different elements and aspects of interdepartmental cooperation and how different things are done at an organizational level. And specific assignments are given just to make people work in different teams so as to bring about certain outcomes which will help an individual in the course of a long-term career. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of on-the-job training and development? Now, the assignments which are given must have specific purpose as part of the on-the-job training. Now, it works best when the trainee is a practical type who is comfortable with learning as he does the job. Now, trainers are themselves trained. Now, whoever is picked up for training the new recruit should be comfortable and should have the skills and the competencies to train people. Now, the organization is tolerant of mistakes. Any new recruit is bound to mistakes. Now, whether the organization is tolerant of making these mistakes and whether they can pick up some experience from this incident and put it back in the learning process. So this defines the on-the-job training process, and if this is in place, you have several advantages of this method. Now, other approaches, self-development approaches, let's say informal, wherein people learn as they do, so there is no practical training involved, so they go on learning as they do their job. Self-managed, people pick up courses of their own interest and they do learning at their own pace. Now, experiential, as said, they go on and they experience by doing different things. Now, induction training is something which we all go through when you join an organization. It is the first training which is given to an employee just to make him comfortable with the rules, the regulations and the procedures in a particular organization. First up, HR takes up the role of induction, wherein he gives general briefing about the culture, the different policies involved and the day-to-day activities. Then it is to be handed over to the line manager, wherein he briefs about the team, introduces the individual to all the team members, describes the activities on a day-to-day basis, then identifies particular training needs, what he has to go through as part of the induction training, and he goes forward and describes a learning plan wherein the new recruit will go through this learning exercise and make him sit with a senior person to understand and before he actually sets on the floor. Moving on. Now, off-the-job training, you have training providers from the market who can give you the training content and training facilities. Now, you have universities and colleges for different courses and degrees, private sector colleges and training organizations. Now, training consultancies, publishers of training materials and in-house education. These are the various avenues available for you as an organization and for HRD personnel who are developing training material and training calendars from whom you can get content and design your training programs.